Hello everybody, welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today we're doing a box office preview for this upcoming weekend and also a box office look ahead because new numbers for The Marvels has just come out, and let's just say Disney's The Marvels is not looking like it's going to do that much of anything, which isn't that much of a surprise to anyone that's been following the state of Marvel. However, for them to be basically admitting this early on that, yeah, this film could potentially make less than the Taylor Swift Eras Tour, and could even potentially make less than the likes of other films like Five Nights at Freddy's and Killers of the Flower Moon, amongst others, or at the very least be on the same level domestically. Let's just say that's a very, very bad sign, and it currently is showing the state of the MCU in today's market. So we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about other things that are coming out, and again, films that are continuing to come out and continuing to have their releases. Before any further though, please make sure you smash that like button, loud the fire button, honestly smash the rumble button as well, and also make sure that you are subscribed to the channel with that bell notification on. That way you know every time a video or live stream goes live on the channel. So the big news, of course, going to the weekend is the Taylor Swift Eras Tour. As you can see, the concert film sells out, which is outpacing Barbie, Spider-Man No Way Home, amongst others. Now, what's interesting about this, of course, is the fact that it's a very unique distribution deal because it's pretty much exclusively being done through AMC theaters. Now, they are doing some smaller deals with other theater chains and with other theaters across the world, but it's primarily being an AMC exclusive release. It's one of these one of these new things, basically, where AMC has become in this regard a distributor. It'll be interesting to see if there's any lawsuits that potentially come away from that, as the theater being both the exhibitor and the distributor of the movie. But again, we'll have to wait and see. Time will only tell on that one. But according to Tony over at Deadline, good old Tony, says, heading into the Swift snowfall this weekend at the box office, here's what we can tell you about her AMC distributed film. As already has been reported, a $100+ million projection is in store per distribution sources, and another $50 million overseas for what is potentially a $150 million debut for a concert film. That's very impressive. But part of those stats come from box office analytics firm Intelligence, which is observing sellouts for Taylor Swift the Eras Tour significantly outstripping Barbie, and percentage-wise that of Spider-Man No Way Home. And again, notice how they're trying to mince words. They're saying, well, just percentage-wise, not in total numbers. Obviously, Spider-Man No Way Home's opening weekend was just vast in almost every single market. That film went on to make well over $1 billion, and so I don't think you're going to see $1 billion for the Taylor Swift movie. And personally, if I had to make a guess, I would say, though the opening weekend is going to be very strong, especially domestically, I would not be surprised to see a pretty strong drop-off in week 2. Primarily because, and this I think is kind of doubled by the fact that we're seeing these sellouts in certain locations. People are treating this like an event, right? People are treating this like I don't want to miss out on this event type thing. And so people are going to be going to see it at the very first showing, right? It made $5 million in its opening Thursday, for instance. And so people are trying their best to go see it opening weekend. I don't know necessarily if it's going to have the staying power, though, in order to be able to go on into the second, third, and fourth weekend. Now, again, could be wrong on that. We only see a 50% drop, and that would still be very strong, right? If it opens up $100 million domestic and it has a 50% drop, it's still making $50 million in its second weekend. Now, again, personally, I think based off of the kind of movie that this is, as it is a filming of a concert that many of the people going to see it have already seen, I don't know exactly how much rewatchability there's going to be in that, but again, these Swifties are a bit crazy at times. Someone who is a high school teacher, I know that these Swifties are quite intense and a little bit cultish. So you never know. You could potentially see them show up in droves in the second, third, and fourth weekends. But I don't know. Something about it just seems to indicate that it's going to have a pretty massive opening, but then have again pretty good drop offs after that point in time. But again, very, very impressive numbers nonetheless. Can't take anything away from that, especially when you add to the fact that, according to at least Wikipedia, it does not provide a source here, so take this with a giant grain of salt. Its budget is estimated to be between $10 and $20 million. Now, keep in mind, right, all of these performances, all of these shows are going to cost money, but they get a ton of money in return, right? These artists get paid a crap ton of money. Someone like Taylor Swift especially is going to get a major cut of any of the ticket sales and things like that. And so, obviously, she's already made her money off of this tour. And so the amount of money that they probably spent just to be able to film this and to edit it and distribute it is probably just nothing in comparison to what they had already made from the concert. Now add on to that the fact that you're going to get, hundreds of millions of dollars in ticket sales, and they're probably going to see a pretty decent split between them and the studio, between them and the theater. Again, I believe I broke this down actually before I went on my small hiatus because of the birth of my daughter, that they had already kind of put out there what the percentage split was going to be. It's going to be a pretty good split for AMC. They're going to definitely get a good piece of the pie there, but also at the same time, you're going to have a huge portion going towards Taylor Swift and her Swiftie Nation. Speaking of which, we have over at the Box Office Pro website that they are projecting actually to be even higher. So again, the $100+ million is for the domestic. That's what's currently being estimated. Whereas over at Box Office Pro, as you all know, they tend to have a little bit on the higher side most of the time. And in the case of Barbie, they ended up being correct. We'll see if they're correct here. It would not surprise me. A film like this, domestically opening weekend, I think the number's going to be big. After that, I don't have nearly as much confidence. But $131 million is what they are projecting right now at over 3,800 screens. And again, this is primarily an AMC Theaters distributed film. Now, as you can see, there's also distribution coming from Variance Films, and that's why it will be showing in some other locations. And so if you happen to see, any locations outside of an AMC that have this movie, or have this, I should say, this recorded rock concert or pop concert, I should say, then that's the reason why. And so again, primarily though, it's going to be an AMC ordeal. Coming into its second weekend of release is The Exorcist Believer, dropping 66%. So a pretty massive drop off. But as we've mentioned previously, the film is on pace to make its money back as far as an individual release goes. However, when you expand that out and to remind yourself that Universal spent $400 million to get the rights to The Exorcist, again, I don't quite understand where they got that number from. Obviously, that would probably include, I imagine, distribution rights, obviously things like that for the original Exorcist movie and for the other subsequent releases, which have some kind of fan base. I don't know necessarily if $400 million would be worth it, but they're definitely not making that kind of money on this movie, though, right? The movie itself is going to be able to sustain its, $20-30 million budget, but it's not going to be able to make anywhere close to a dent in that $400 million that they spent. They actually get the rights. And so even though, again, looking okay for the individual release, for the overall purchase, still not looking good at all. Paw Patrol, in its, third or fourth week of release, is still holding strong, 31% drop again, $7.8 million, getting close to $50.9 million. Film has already crossed $100 million. It got close to crossing $100 million last weekend, so this film is continuing to add to its overall profits. Saw 10 is also on that path of profitability as well, likely to make a decent amount of change there, dropping only 45%, so a pretty decent drop off there. Then you have films like The Creator, which is a very good film, I highly recommend it, dropping 36%. So again, not the worst drop off in the world in a third, fourth week release, but at the same time, it's not making nearly enough money to make up for its budget. Even though the budget is a lot less than what the film looks like, it looks like a film that costs, 3 or 4 times the amount. And there are films that have cost 3 to 4 times the amount, right, that have looked awful. This film looks fantastic. It's still $80 million. You still got to make close to $200 million to break even, and it's just not going to get close to that, especially when it's only made $32.2 million in the domestic market. You also have the event film The Blind. I think it's a faith-based movie, and so that film is also still doing pretty well, especially for Fathom Events. Haunting in Venice is not doing well. Again, par for the course there. Dumb Money, unfortunately, as well, because it has a budget of around $30 to $40 million, still also needs to make a decent amount to break even, and only at 13.2, not having that much of an international presence, it's just not likely going to break even. This is a film I hope to be able to see today. Might have a review up on that on the channel, maybe if I have time. Right now, if you see my eyes going down, it's because I got my baby monitor on right now, keeping my eye out for a baby girl. So if things go well today, I might be able to check that film out. And then you have The Nun 2, Equalizer 3. Nun 2 adding overall to its profits. Equalizer 3 getting released on physical media very soon, and also getting released onto pre-VOD services. If not already, then very soon. Then you're looking at this film also, again, not likely going to be that much. It's probably going to end up actually officially being a bomb. However, again, we have to take that with a giant grain of salt, because this film's franchise is the worst performing of the franchise, but it's doing well enough for it to be able to potentially make its money back, especially in post-theatrical releases. Now, I know some of you probably heard at the very beginning saying, wait, you mentioned this in the title as well, the Marvels, why is it taking so long? Well, because the box office preview comes first, but the long-range forecasting for this, yes, I could have done a dedicated video for this, but because I have such limited time these days, I just figured, you know what, I might as well talk about it now, because I saw that it had just updated this morning. And so the Marvels, that's right, Disney's The Marvels, Captain Marvel 2 with Queen Brie, $50 to $75 million opening weekend domestically. Oh boy. With a total domestic range, this is again the estimates coming from Box Office Pro. These estimates will update and change over time. Again, we're still about a month out from this release, but the overall range domestically, $121 to $189 million total for a Disney Marvel film. For a film, remember, the first Captain Marvel film, everyone said, hey, guess what? Well, Captain Marvel 1 made $1 billion. There must be something great about it. I think this is kind of showing the emperor has no clothes, right? I think that this is actually the kind of numbers we're looking at saying, yeah, I think this proves to us that, yeah, every single comment made about why the Captain Marvel film made money, the proximity that it was to Endgame, the fact that they were prepping it and promoting it to be an important step in the entire universe, setting up for Endgame, so people felt like they had to go see it. All these other factors that came into it ultimately led to that film making $1 billion. It's not because the film was that good. It's not because the film was driving out those many people, right? It's not like a Barbie situation where that film is clearly driving out a certain demographic. Marvel is still predominantly a male audience, a male-driven audience, and a lot of people that came out of the Marvels, or either Captain Marvel, it was so funny because some of the biggest shills for it who gave it, positive scores, gave it fresh ratings, when you ask them, oh, where would you put this then on your chart of favorite to least favorite Marvel films? Most of the time, this film was either in the middle of the pack, talking about the first Captain Marvel, it was either in the middle of the pack or the bottom of the pack. And so it didn't actually really match up to the overall scores that the film was actually getting. And so for this film to be getting this amount makes perfect sense to me. It'd be hilarious if the film makes even less, but let's just say, based on the fact that this film probably is going to cost at least $200 million, and again, whatever numbers they're having out right now, I wouldn't buy it because these films are almost always costing more than what they say. So I would say 200 minimum, $200 million minimum as far as the overall cost. That means the film needs to make roughly $500 million worldwide to break even. And again, that's being very, very generous. At $121 to $189 domestic, I highly doubt it's going to be able to make that much money back in the international sales. But the other thing, too, just to get a bit of a comparison, so $121 to $189 is the current range for Box Office Pro. And again, take it with a grain of salt because that's still pretty early out. But just to give you an idea, Five Nights at Freddy's on the high end actually has an estimate of $129. So there is a world out there where if, let's say, this film, Five Nights at Freddy's, overperforms and gets into the $120 million territory, and let's say Captain Marvel ends up going towards the bottom end of its range, you could see the films be somewhat comparable there. You then add that to a film like Killers of the Flower Moon, and even though the heights of Killers of the Flower Moon is not nearly as high as the Captain Marvel one, right? Captain Marvel has basically an end point for them of 189, whereas Killers of the Flower Moon is 156. The fact that it's even within the discussion that the films could end up being around the same amount of money domestically says a lot about the current state of the MCU, and also says a lot about how Brie Larson is not a box office draw, and that the movie itself is just not really appealing to much of anybody. Again, I know that I can maybe count on one hand the amount of people who I've heard say that they're actually excited to see this movie. And most of them who are excited to see it are people who are ready to eviscerate it. So it's not even that there's a lot of kind of positive reactions to it. I'm very excited for a film like Killers of the Flower Moon. Very awesome to see that film having some pretty high projections there. Great to see Scorsese kind of showing, hey, guess what? Real movies can actually make money at the box office. Who would have thunk? And then also I've heard some interesting things about Five Nights at Freddy's. Again, the trailers have looked pretty interesting nonetheless. But hey, big news of the day. Marvel's is projected to have a terrible domestic, not just domestic opening, but also overall domestic total run, total range, and couldn't happen to a nicer company. Can't wait to see how much money the Marvels will end up losing. But anyway, those are my thoughts on the box office. What are y'all's thoughts? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, like the fire button, I see smash the rumble button as well. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, God bless. And now for a huge special shout out to all of my Chosen of Valhalla members: Father Luca Illich, Laura, the Mother Major General's Story, Rosetta Allen, check out her YouTube channel by the name Eagle Rider, Miss Martin Muses, check out her YouTube channel by the same name. Also to Matt317, check out his Twitch channel of the same name. Mr. Roy and ZK-Man, check him out over at xtheboundaries.co. Thank you very much for being my chosen members this month. And if you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and video, also access to a podcast, access to a giveaways channel, and tons of other stuff, go check out to be a member today in the links in the video description below. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.